Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you all for showing up. I know the weather forecasting this weekend was quite stressful, but it turns out we have such a beautiful day that the glare of the sun meant we had to take away the view. So apologies for that. But thank you all for joining us first thing this Monday morning. And I'd like to welcome the consuls generals and the ambassadors that have joined us this morning. Welcome, excellencies. It is really an honor to be here at the Ford Foundation and to partner with our host, Darren Walker, and his team here at Ford. Their continued support of New York City's Global Vision Urban Action programming is very much appreciated. They are an important partner, not only from a perspective of values and action, but they also are our neighbors. So it is a great partnership to have. I'd like to thank the Strategic Partnerships team at the International Affairs Office, specifically Deputy Commissioner Hilary Chanel and Mina Nabisada, who have really worked tirelessly to take this collaboration between New York City, the United Nations, and the larger diplomatic community from idea to action. This is now our second event, and really excited to have you all here. Now, I have the honor to be New York City's Commissioner for International Affairs, and I'm really thrilled to be here with you today for this second installment of Global Vision Urban Action, which is focused on equity in and through technology. With an incredibly diverse population of 8.5 million people, this great city of ours can often feel like a small country. We grapple with key concerns that might be familiar to all of you: the need for climate-resilient development, quality education, and education access, as well as access to jobs for our citizens. At your seat, there is a book titled A City with Global Goals. I hope you all have one of these, which highlights the synergies between Mayor de Blasio's OneNYC, a vision for a more equitable and inclusive city, and the Global Sustainable Development Goals. Global Vision Urban Action is predicated on the idea that while countries and cities share problems, they more importantly share solutions. By bringing together experts and representatives from New York City and the international community, we hope to use this platform to share information and forge innovative solutions that can be adopted here and around the world. In recognition of Women's History Month and the 60th session of the Commission on the Status of Women, today's discussion, Equity in and Through Technology, will focus not only on the role broadband and technology can play in achieving equity, but also the vital role of gender equity within the tech space. Today, bridging the digital divide is more critical than ever. Access to technology is a critical enabler of social and economic change, offering new creative ways to address development challenges. Technology can help to promote steady improvements in living conditions and create more sustainable and equitable cities and countries. I hope you're all excited about this coming program we have curated for you. We have the pleasure of hearing from and speaking with nationally and internationally recognized leaders. This event will take place in two parts. The first will be a series of 4 mini TED-style talks, which will highlight a set of specific tech initiatives developed here in New York City, as well as globally. And then we will transition to a conversation with 3 leaders in this space and focus on how equity can be reached both within and through the use of broadband and technology. Now, to kick us off, it is my pleasure to introduce Lauren Anderson, Director of Strategy at New York City Tech Talent Pipeline, a creative public-private partnership launched by Mayor de Blasio in May 2014 to support the growth of the tech sector and prepare New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs for 21st century jobs. Together with industry, the Tech Talent Pipeline works to define needs, develop education and training solutions, and deliver quality talent from a diverse pool of New Yorkers. Lauren, welcome.
Good morning. Excellent, good response. Well, thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, team, for having me here today. The topic of promoting equity in and through technology is at the heart of what we do at the Tech Talent Pipeline. So it's my pleasure to be here to surface how we're going about doing this through this initiative. And where better to start than with the example of what's possible. So meet Sebastian and Geraldina. Sebastian is 26, he's from Brooklyn, New York. He has always been interested in computers and wanted to go to college, but unfortunately had to drop out after a year when his family could no longer afford it. He was able to get a job loading and unloading cargo for $10 an hour with a moving company, but he knew that's not the career he wanted. He wants a career in technology, but has no idea of how to get there without a degree. Similarly, Geraldina came with her family to the States about 9 years ago. She enrolled in the public university system here in New York, where she discovered a love of artificial intelligence and computer science, but unfortunately she also had to drop out after a year due to financial issues. Geraldina and Sebastian are not unique. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of young New Yorkers who are passionate, our city's greatest resource. They want to connect to jobs and technology. They want to help give back to their communities, but they just don't understand what the clear path is. They don't have the skills to be able to enter these jobs now, and they don't have the connections to employment that they need in order to succeed. This is a problem, especially at a time when the New York City tech ecosystem is booming. So the New York City tech ecosystem accounts for about $30 billion in annual wages, employs about 291,000 people, and has grown at a rate of 6 times the rest of the New York City economy, and shows no signs of stopping. So some New York economists predict that it's going to grow by up to 30% in high-tech jobs in the years ahead. And nationwide, this is not unique to New York, there are about 1.4 million computing jobs that are expected to open by 2020. This is huge growth, and we have a responsibility to ensure that folks like Sebastian and Geraldina are included in this explosive growth. Fortunately, we also have a tremendous opportunity. New York City has a number of resources, from our 30,000 employers to 8.4 million New Yorkers, our $500 million public workforce system, all of the students in the DOE, which amounts to 1.1 million students, which, by the way, makes New York public city students 1 in every 300 Americans, which is an interesting fact. We have 125 colleges and other training solutions that can help align and prepare students for what the workforce is actually looking for. Just a quick note, the scale is great here in New York, but these elements exist across communities across the globe. And the real trick is, how do you align them with what industry needs? So, to that end, recognizing this responsibility and opportunity, the mayor launched the Tech Talent Pipeline in May of 2014 with the goal of helping to support the growth of the tech ecosystem by delivering quality jobs for New Yorkers and quality talent for the city's businesses. We're doing this by pursuing a 4-pillar strategy. We're an industry partnership, so first and foremost, we work with industry to, as the Commissioner mentioned, define needs. What are the jobs? Where are the jobs? And more importantly, what are those skills that map back to those jobs in an environment where it's ever changing in the tech sector? Once we have a list of what those key in-demand occupations are, we're building out solutions, 10 new and expanded training programs that are developed together with industry. So what does that look like? Over the past 6 months, about 60 companies have donated about 30 hours of their time to sit down with us on a biweekly basis and define what curriculum actually needs to look like. They are helping us to define units. They are reviewing folks coming in and out of programs in order to ensure that their skills are aligned with the trends that are coming across the tech market. Once we know what works in these programs, we need to ensure that Geraldina and Sebastian and other New Yorkers have the information they need to be able to pursue these programs. So we're mobilizing New Yorkers and then taking what we've learned to drive change across those systems and resources that I mentioned earlier. We've had great success so far. We have about 150 employer partners in the past year we've developed. 14 higher ed institutions have committed to doing this work together with industry. We have about 1.1 million students that I mentioned who, thanks to Mayor de Blasio's announcement in September, are going to receive computer science education at the elementary, middle, and high school levels, first in the country to do that at that level. And then for this work, we've earned recognition from the White House, which is helping other cities to adapt this model, which is easily transplantable to other environments. So why is this important? A year ago, Geraldina and Sebastian didn't know what their future was going to hold. This is them with the mayor last month. They were asked to join him because today they're employed as software engineers, earning $70,000 and higher, working for Foursquare, you can see by Sebastian's shirt, he's a great publicist, and Vice Media. They were able to do this thanks to a program called the New York City Web Development Fellowship, which is a program for individuals with no previous professional experience. It's 5 months, it's intensive, it's full-time, it features a 12-week internship component, and it's free of cost to students, and it's one of those 10 programs that we oversee. And Sebastian and about 120 of their peers have gone through this program and have been connected to employment at about $65,000 per year and higher, working for businesses across the city. And they are paving the way for many other New Yorkers. And we're happy to announce today that we actually have partnered with Robin Hood and the Flatiron School to be able to offer a cohort of the Web Development Fellowship specifically tailored to foreign-born New Yorkers. This is going to be free, as these other programs have been. It does not have a degree requirement, and is going to start recruiting today. So if you have any questions, please come find me. The cohort will actually start in June, but we need your help. We need your help in ensuring that your communities are aware of this opportunity. And in doing so, we're confident that together we'll be able to help promote equity by scaling this program. Thank you.
Wow, thank you for making that announcement here. I know that Lauren is really looking to spread the word around the new iteration of the program, around foreign-born students getting access to this. So the more you guys can tweet, talk to her, connect with her, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Now I'm pleased to present Josh Breitbart, Special Advisor for Broadband from the Office of the Mayor of New York City. As Special Advisor for Broadband, Joshua is responsible for coordinating key aspects of the administration's work to ensure universal, affordable broadband throughout the 5 boroughs. That's a small little job you have, huh? Including our exciting new Link NYC program, which I hope you've all seen around town. And I welcome you up. Josh, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think the idea here is that we all agree on is that social and economic equity requires tech equity. And to have tech equity, you really need equity in tech infrastructure. And that's a key part of the mayor's agenda, why I have the opportunity to work with Council to Mayor Maya Wiley on ensuring equitable broadband throughout the 5 boroughs. So we're actually here in this room just a few months ago talking about broadband, so the mayor said something I want to start and end with what he said. He said the question we always have to face when we think about technology and the internet is, are we deepening democracy, or are we simply deepening some of the problems and patterns that existed before these tools? Now, what do those patterns look like? This is an example of the largest fiber provider in the world, Level 3 Communications. It mirrors the internet globally, and you can see it's based on patterns of existing economic development. And so the existing infrastructure really hardwires those patterns. And New York City, as a center of economic development, is a global landing point for internet infrastructure, and it looks like, it's really, it looks like just one big splotch on that map. But when you zoom in to the level of the city, you see that even within New York City, we have those same patterns of inequity. Very dense coverage in lower Manhattan, less so as you move throughout the boroughs. And again, this is just one company, but it mirrors the distribution generally. So what is the city doing to promote equitable fiber optic deployment? And I'm talking about fiber optic as a representative of the infrastructure generally, because that's really what the heart of the internet is fiber optic lines. So the first is franchise accountability. I'm just going to go through these fairly quickly and focus on a couple of them. This is a fiber optic provider, a map of where they do and don't have service. And again, this is indicative of what the private market has done essentially on its own, divided the city into zones. The shaded zone is where they don't make their service available. And we're using our oversight authority to ensure that they build out equitably and that all companies serve the entire city equitably. Now, new innovative franchises. So We looked at some of the other infrastructure that we have and how could we make that available to tech providers, and in particular our aging payphone franchise. So our payphones distributed throughout the entire city. Again, you can see concentrated in Manhattan, but they're throughout the city. With the leadership of Council to the Mayor Maya Wiley, CTO Minerva Tantoko, both of them you'll hear from later, and our DUA Commissioner Ann Roast. The result was Link NYC. Link NYC, we're very excited about this. I don't know if anybody got a chance to see these. They're now out on 3rd Avenue. You walk right over to 43rd Street and 3rd Avenue and see these. But this is being built at no cost to the city. It's going to generate at least $500 million in revenue for the city over the next 12 years. It's going to be in all five boroughs, ADA compliant. It has an Android tablet for free web browsing, as well as a tactile keypad with Braille, free USB charger, and a fiber-driven, super high-speed Wi-Fi up to gigabit speeds throughout the 5 boroughs. So again, very excited about that initiative. Also leveraging our telecommunications spending, in this case, looking at schools. Schools are evenly distributed, and by diversifying our spending there, we're able to promote build-out and competition throughout the city. So again, looking at that as an asset. Also, our using public-private partnerships, in particular to reach businesses in our industrial business zones. These are areas of the city that, again, private market hadn't served. So we're using city investment partnered with private investment to bring, in this case, to the Southwest Brooklyn Industrial Development Zone, speeds up to 10 gigabits per second in that area. And lastly, direct municipal service, again, focus on areas where the private market isn't serving. And for that, we're looking at our public housing. Our public housing is 318 developments throughout the city, and in this instance, it's concentrated. This asset is concentrated in areas of low-income neighborhoods. There are 400,000 residents in public housing, so in and of itself, it's a large city. By making investments in this area, we can reach areas of the city that have been unserved. The first development that we're focusing on is the Queensbridge houses. So the largest public housing development in North America. We're bringing new fiber optic service to each of the 26 buildings there, using Wi-Fi to reach all 7,000 residents with free broadband service. We're going to follow this up with additional developments in each borough. So again, just the second part of what the mayor said about this is that it's up to us to take a set of new tools and bend them toward democracy and inclusion, to bend them toward equality, and it will be as open, as democratic as we make it, as we insist it be. And that is what we're doing with the internet in New York City. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josh. Now it's my pleasure to invite Dana Zucker, thank you, from UNICEF Innovation as an interdisciplinary team of individuals who identify, build, and scale technologies and practices that strengthen UNICEF's work and improve children's lives around the world. UNICEF Innovation pushes in many ways to find how to use mobile technology to help deliver vital services, including when broadband and smartphones are not part of the equation. Dana, welcome.
Thank you, Penny, and thank you guys all for coming here today. As Penny mentioned, my name is Dana Zucker, and I'm part of a team that explores how existing and emerging technologies can support the work of UNICEF and bring results to all children. Throughout the past 40 years, there has been incredible progress made for children worldwide. But when we talk about equity, what's still left is the really difficult work of reaching all children, the most vulnerable children, and bringing results to everyone. So if you look at the environment that puts us in, we have global challenges making things really, really difficult. We have a worsening climate. We have displaced children who are on the move and who are unaccounted for. We have some whose life as they knew it no longer exists. Increasingly, youth are disenfranchised and they don't have the skills to prepare them for the jobs of today. And on top of all of this, we have emerging crises all the time, like the current Zika virus. So in these difficult times, how do we improve? How do we improve the lives of all children, especially the most vulnerable and hardest to reach, to give all children a fair chance and help them realize their potential? UNICEF believes that every child deserves access to life-saving and educational information, which will give them the opportunity to have choices to live fulfilling lives that are healthy and get jobs that can give them a sustainable lifestyle. But the population we're talking about typically doesn't even have access to electricity, let alone internet or broadband. They're quite disconnected from infrastructure like roads. So we work with what's available, and increasingly, that's your basic mobile phone, your old school Nokia that you've probably forgotten you ever had. And I want to take a few minutes to show you some of these mobile solutions that are helping UNICEF reach people with more essential services, giving them access to information, opportunity, and choice. And these solutions are helping support equitable achievement of the SDGs. So for instance, we've implemented real-time information tools that allow frontline health and education workers to use basic SMS to increase the speed and efficiency of tracking and monitoring where vital supplies like stocks of vaccines, textbooks, have they arrived, and also checking whether or not there are staff issues, like are teachers showing up for school, and are people getting the type of service they need at clinics. These same tools can be adapted to help with maternal and newborn health. So for instance, by using SMS to deliver HIV lab results in rural Zambia, mothers can find out in half the time it used to take if her child is HIV positive, getting them into treatment faster and increasing their chances of survival by 75%. These same tools can also be sent to moms to increase their postnatal follow-up visits to the clinics. This helps track her and her newborn's health and increases the likelihood that her child will be registered. About a third of the world's children are not registered at birth. It means they have no formal identity. This creates many challenges for them later in life and for the systems that are designed to help them because they don't know they exist. Another tool we've created is called U-Report. And this is designed to empower youth by enabling real-time communication between young people throughout a country and their decision makers. About 2 million youth today in 19 countries use U-Report to voice their opinion on everything from disease outbreaks to violence in homes or at schools, access to safe drinking water, to insufficient supplies at a healthcare clinic. You name it, they can talk about it. And what we found is it's been such a simple system to get adopted because it's on a basic SMS, it's on a basic mobile phone, it's free for the end user, so it reduces barrier to entry. And we're expanding it now so it can be accessed on an app on a smartphone, as well as on Twitter, as well as on Telegram. So the channels are constantly expanding, but our base is an SMS where most people are using a basic mobile phone. And the way it works is U-Reporters receive polls on a weekly basis. Let me show you an example of one. In Liberia, we heard rumors that students were being exploited for sex in return for grades, but it was just rumors. So we polled more than 60,000 Liberian U-Reporters and asked them if they thought sex for grades was a problem. Within just a few days, we learned that 86% of the 13,000 people who responded said plainly, yes. They had to type A or B into their phone, and they typed A. Yes. With this information, we were able to work with the Ministry of Education to set up a helpline and provide these students with a safe way to report their issue. We heard from the helpline workers they had never been more inundated with calls before. And because all of our polls on U-Report can be visualized on a map, we can look specifically where a problem may exist. Now, unfortunately, in Liberia, everything's green because this was nationwide. But in other instances, we can see specifically where there is a problem. So this was a quick sampling of some of our tech-based tools at national and international scale that are helping UNICEF and partners reach even more children. To complement these tools, we've also recently launched the UNICEF Innovation Fund as a way to create new solutions for children faster. The fund is a pooled funding vehicle that fuels a generation of open source tech solutions from developing countries by investing in emerging innovators who have prototypes and need some investment to take their idea to the next scale. We also have a team dedicated to focusing on emerging technologies with the private sector, like drones and wearables, and what their potential to help children will be. So while tech can clearly help our goals, no amount of technology alone can fix a broken system. And that's why we work on tech solutions that are in line with our principles, which you can see here. But probably the most important principle is that solutions need to be open source so that they can be adapted and used by our partners. So for instance, if we create a solution with the Liberian government to help fight the Ebola response, we want to be able to let the responders in Brazil who are fighting Zika use those same tools quicker and faster than it took us to create them the first time. So we found that open source is the ticket to taking things to scale and getting them implemented quickly. So I'll close by letting you know that the mobile solutions I spoke about today, as well as many more, are all available in the public domain, and they can be tailored and adapted to fit your needs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dana. We have one final TED Talk. I am very pleased to present Kristen Morrissey-Thiede, who recently joined Starry, a wireless broadband company, as their Senior Vice President of Business Development and Corporate Strategy. Before joining Starry, Kristen spent 14 years at Google, where she helped to lead Google Fiber, and before that, Google Access. While at Google, Kristen experienced firsthand the challenges and successes in building a broadband network both locally and internationally. Kristen, thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you, Penny and her team, and thank you for the Ford Foundation for this lovely morning place to spend our breakfast. This morning I'm going to talk about infrastructure. So after Dana's conversation, this certainly is less exciting, or at least less emotionally driven. But I know some of you woke up this morning and really wanted to talk about infrastructure, and I won't disappoint you. So the examples I'm going to talk about are US-based, but they can be applied rurally as well as globally in urban environments. So they're just two concepts to think through. First of all, connecting the world is important. And Mark Zuckerberg and I agree on this. How many of you have a cell phone? Raise your hand. Everybody has a cell phone. Okay. So in your hand, you're holding more computing power than the spaceship that landed on the moon. That's pretty amazing. And so access to the internet is access to opportunity. It's access to a world beyond yourself. And you can learn anything. You can learn Mandarin. Sal Khan at the Khan Academy will teach you algebra. Your limits are endless as long as you have access to this technology. So in order to access the internet, you have to have connectivity. And in order to have connectivity, you have to have infrastructure. So we're back on track. We're talking about infrastructure. So the folks who own infrastructure in the US are normally telephone companies and cable providers. They own the infrastructure. They built it. And so they really don't have a great incentive to improve it or make it faster because they don't have a lot of competition. And so we're kind of stuck with really low speeds. If you live in New York, some of it is pretty low, and it's pretty expensive for a pretty bad service. So there are a few concepts that we can apply to increase competition and make it easier for others to access this space. So one of these ideas, this is a fabulous highway, is called Dig Once. So Dig Once is a bipartisan, which if you're following American politics is pretty amazing these days, is a bipartisan idea for broadband development. It's increasing coordination between government agencies, utility companies, to increase the frequency of digging up your highways. Now, who would like to experience less traffic? This is a fantastic idea for everybody. These proposals include requirements that new fiber conduit, fiber conduit banks be installed automatically every time federal money is given to improve a highway. So this is gutting much of the cumbersome regulations that a new business would interact with trying to dig up a highway. So by laying broadband conduit and construction of roads that receive federal funding, the broadband providers can come in later and install fiber optic cables cost effectively. Dig Once is a common sense policy to lower the cost of broadband deployment. It's important to increase competition, faster speeds, and lower prices. At a later date, fiber providers can come in and basically string a fiber through these empty pipes, like that, kind of like that. So this benefits our citizens, your citizens, with less traffic, less noise, less waste, and a faster broadband deployment. So all around, a pretty good idea. So that's dig once. And I hope you're all really enjoying our infrastructure conversation. So next up, we're going to talk about infrastructure, but this time it's invisible infrastructure. It's spectrum. So that is what spectrum. This isn't invisible, but you get the point. So radio frequencies travel through the airwaves. We need spectrum for many things. Radar, radio, when you change the radio, ooh, I have to go faster. Radio, garage door openers, sending and receiving things through your mobile phone. All kinds of spectrum is used for these things. In the United States, the spectrum is federally regulated by the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. And there are two kinds of spectrum. There's unlicensed and licensed. Unlicensed spectrum creates an environment that is loosely permissionless innovation. Anyone can create anything, any device, or any communication technology as long as it complies with the rules of that particular spectrum band. Unlicensed spectrum is really important purpose of allowing space for creating innovation and momentum for new ideas. It's a space for future entrepreneurs to create the unimaginable. Licensed spectrum allows companies to invest in a quality of service that customers can rely on. For example, mobile phones and companies with the 4G technology. Both licensed and unlicensed spectrum serve an important and different purpose. The mix of the two is critical for success, allowing an open playground for innovation so that the next great technology can be discovered, and having licensed spectrum for companies to be able to invest and acquire to build a long-term business. The balance and flexibility in setting these rules for different uses over time will be key to serving our citizens. Our infrastructure conversation now comes to an end, but please examine these in two important ideas as you think through the technological infrastructure for your citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Now we are ready to move on to our panel conversation. So it is my honor to present our speakers. We are very fortunate today to have three leaders in the tech field who've been very engaged with both Mayor de Blasio's OneNYC and the Sustainable Development Goals, respectively. I'm especially thankful to have with me two trailblazers from the de Blasio administration who are leading the way for women in tech in New York City. In an administration where women make up almost 60% of senior leadership posts, women truly are leading the way in bridging the digital divide. First, we have Maya Wiley, who is a counsel to the mayor and key advisor to Mayor de Blasio. In addition to advising the mayor on legal matters, she also spearheads the city's initiative to provide affordable broadband access across all 5 boroughs and has led special projects for the mayor focused on improving access to jobs for all New Yorkers and improving civil rights, human rights, and gender equity throughout the city. This also includes her role as a director of the city's Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprise Program. Thank you for joining us, Maya. Minerva Tantaco, at the far end of the panel, is the first ever Chief Technology Officer for New York City and the Director of the Mayor's Technology and Innovation Office. Minerva has a long and impressive career in the tech space. For more than 25 years, so since she's been about 5 years old, she's been launching her own startups to directing technology and innovation for large enterprises. Minerva has worked to create and deploy forward-thinking, innovative technology. With her appointment as the city's first CTO, she brings this wealth of experience in technology-enabled transformation to government and works every day to challenge the status quo and use technology to make New York City the most innovative, tech-friendly, and equitable big city in the world. And finally, we have Ambassador Sven Jorgensen. Welcome, Ambassador, permanent representative of the Mission of Estonia to the United Nations and also the president of the Executive Board of UNICEF. Estonia is a world leader in technology, and we are excited to have the ambassador on our panel today. Estonia holds the record for startups per person, and in 2007, the tech-savvy government of Estonia became the first country to allow online voting in a general election. I want to hear how that went. And did you know that Estonia's technologists were the ones who developed the code behind Skype, which I am pretty sure we all benefit from, an app that I'm sure many of you in this room are very familiar with? We are going to use our time in this discussion for two issues. First, on how equity, OneNYC, and sustainable development goals can be reached through the use of broadband and tech. And second, how we can encourage and enable greater equity within the tech sector with a particular focus on gender equity, again, in honor of the Commission on Status of Women and the month of March. After that, we will definitely open up the floor for questions. We've allocated about 10, 15 minutes for questions, so we really look forward to hearing from you. And now I will sit. I know, don't slip. Okay. Minerva, I want to start with you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So as I mentioned, your office oversees tech initiatives aimed at making the city better for all New Yorkers. Can you point to a few examples where you deployed innovative technology that you believe will improve our environment, health, and safety as part of the OneNYC plan, and how you think other global cities can use this tech to achieve the sustainable development goals, again, really underlying the connectivity focus for both OneNYC and the SDGs?
Sure. Well, a big part of our my office's mission is to develop a citywide technology strategy, and our goal is to use technology to support the goals of OneNYC in terms of public safety, health, and equity. And so while we are a smart city, we've got a lot of cool tech. We have ShotSpotter, which instantly detects gunshots and immediately notifies the nearby police stations. We have wireless water meters, which detect leaks in water and alerts building landlords about leaks, not only saving them money, but saving water. We also have done an experiment of a pilot, which will be expanded, called Midtown in Motion, which actually has smart traffic lights that give priority to public transportation by connecting with the GPS on the buses. So that has been shown in our pilot to reduce our commute times on those buses by 20%. So those are some of the really cool tech things. But here in New York City, we don't believe that cool tech is enough, that to be a smart city, you must also be an equitable city. Mm-hmm. And so that our focus is to assure that the smart city technology supports all the initiatives, and we connect them with the Sustainable Development Goals that were published last September, and apply them directly to the city by making sure that we apply them equally throughout the 5 boroughs.
Thank you. I would love to switch to Maya to explain, if you could explain to the audience your role in expanding affordable broadband, but specifically for this audience, to get a sense of how the city connects broadband to equity, to build on what Minerva's saying and to Josh's quotes from the mayor. If you can make that connection, that would be wonderful.
Sure. So one, it's a pleasure to be here. And I think the opening TED Talks really framed all of it out quite effectively. If you think about broadband, I mean, the truth is it's just a fundamental infrastructure that actually is supposed to produce all of the social goods that are part of our goals, of our shared goals, right? It's like the highway system or the bus system used to be to delivering opportunity to people. It's always about where you're getting to, not whether you're on it, right? So when we were thinking about broadband and the broadband strategy coupled with a mayor who's literally won his office by committing to reduce income inequality, what we were looking at was, first of all, who's got it? Because if you don't have it, you can't utilize it in the way we were hearing from Dana. Right? I mean, Dana was really framing out the Internet of Things, the things that we are able to produce from society because we have the infrastructure. But we had a fundamental barrier because 36% of our population that earns $30,000 or less does not have home broadband. and a lot of that is because of the cost of the infrastructure. So we set about doing what Josh laid out, which was identifying how the government could help produce more broadband access. So one being free internet service for as many NYCHA residents as we could reach. Currently 21,000 residents will be reached by our current plan. And the Link NYC is critical because it actually reduces people's cost. It's not just that it's the coolest thing ever, which it is. It's that if you're low income, and yes, many low income people have a smartphone, but they're pay as you go. So you're making choices all the time about when you have broadband access and what you utilize it for. The more we can have free service around the city as people are traveling around the city and bring down their costs, the more then resources they have for their families to buy food and pay the rent, right? Because they're able to stop paying for the broadband service and also get the more access to the service itself. So that is critical in order to think about how people access the services they need, and frankly, just be able to support their families. So I think the other thing is the tech talent pipeline is another good example that Lauren shared. It's not just whether people have the infrastructure, it's whether they're actually able to utilize it in the economy. So, right? So one of the things that we're very excited about is the mayor for the first time has announced that we'll have universal computer science in the public school system. Used to be, and still is for far too many students, you can't even learn what you can do with this technology. So if you think about the jobs that are coming, if you think about just, even if you're not in a tech job, you have to be able to use a computer, you have to be literally able to translate and use that infrastructure. So education then is a fundamental part of this, universal computer science. I think the last thing I'll say, and we could go on, and I won't take up too much more time, but if we really, really want to measure our impact, we're thinking about how our private sector is actually shifting the way in our tech sector and our telecommunications firms are shifting their relationship to government and to the public so that we're opening up more public space, not closing it. We want to see the commons. We want to see people's ability to utilize this to innovate for their own communities so that we start to see indigenous tech ecosystems. So we start to see people able to be entrepreneurs and to develop their own communities economically from their communities. Not only have folks coming in from other communities to advance them, and that's one of the things we're trying to do.
And it's that open source model that Dana was talking about. Ambassador, hearing what New York City is doing in terms of making that connection between broadband and equity. So I prefaced your introduction with how impressive Estonia is in terms of technology and broadband. Can you give us some context in terms of how your country has achieved this status and what connection that has to equity, and then with the Sustainable Development Goals that were signed in September, how you're going to be using broadband and connectivity to promote those?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me here. And
Of course.
Quite often people are asking actually what is the miracle answer to the question why specifically Estonia is the country that has become the world leader in e-government digital solutions. And as usual, there is no one simple miracle answer. It's a combination of many different things. But the first one, I think, is the most interesting one. And it is, as ambassador here at the United Nations, I see very often that many countries who are scared of going to the path, they seem to think that digital solutions, e-government, it's something for the rich countries. And our example proves that exactly the opposite is true.
Right.
Because one of the main reasons how Estonia started on this path early in the 90s was exactly the fact that we were poor. After 50 years of Soviet occupation, communist regime, Estonia coming out of this was really poor. The infrastructure was dilapidated, we didn't have resources. But on the other hand, if you look at investments necessary to build roads and railway, they're just huge. And as a nation of 1.3 million, it was not easy to go on this path at that point. But there was another infrastructure that was much cheaper, and that was the digital infrastructure. And so this was one of the reasons why we got on this path. The second thing, probably, in the combination of the same coin is the neighborhood. as our closest neighbors are Finland and Sweden, and at the time they were probably seen as the leaders of digital innovation and especially internet, then our targets were high, and we didn't want to be as good as they are. We wanted to be better. The third thing, probably in the same answer, is education. Estonia was poor, but Estonia has always had quite a high level of education. So we got into the game with very good premises. And also what helped was at that time already early 90s, mid 90s, the first half of the 90s, the government introduced a project that was called the Tiger Leap. And Tiger Leap was getting all schools in Estonia online. It seems to be a big project, but actually it's not. Having computer classes in schools, it's not such a big thing to do. So this was one of the few things that was a top-down approach, because most of the innovative solutions that we have are actually bottom-up. And the government played a role of facilitator. The government helped things happen. The government introduced legislation that was helping and so on. But what we learned in educational field was we learned again from Finland. And if you look at the company like Nokia, for example, 30 years ago, Nokia was producing rubber boots. But what happened early in the 80s already, the Finnish government started investing a lot into technical education in universities. And this is something that pays off by time. And so this was the idea behind our movement as well, to start investing into education. And Finland and Estonia are considered to be having one of the best high school educations in the world. There's the PISA tests of OECD, where Estonia and Finland are the best non-Asian countries on the list, on the places 5 and 6 in the world. And the fourth thing worth mentioning in this regard probably is there is a benefit of starting from the scratch. That our people were not used to things like, we've never had checks for payments and so on. So when we started from the scratch, and over jumped many stages of development.
Right.
And I have a very good friend. I've studied data processing myself in university, but it's 30 years ago, and there's no going back in this field, of course. But a good friend of mine who was the head of IT sector of the first best bank in Estonia that was called Hansapank. And later on, Swedbank, one of the biggest Swedish banks, bought this bank. And after buying this Estonian bank, they thought that they are going to bring in specialists from Stockholm to teach Estonians how to have internet banking. But at the first meeting already, they discovered it's the other way around. They started taking Estonians over to Stockholm to teach the Swedes how to do it. But how did we get there? It is that this friend of mine explained at the very beginning when they started the bank, they had their idea how internet banks should be working. And they thought that they are going to the world and they are just going to buy the technology. And then they went to Sweden, then they went to Finland, they went to Germany, they went to the United States, and they discovered it doesn't exist, so they wrote it. And when I was 15 years ago ambassador in Washington, I read in Washington Post, for example, that the same Hansabank was considered to be on the level of internet banking the second best bank in the world. So it was jumping over some stages of development. But the result is, as you mentioned already, Skype was invented in Estonia. There is another startup that was just last year was elected as the best startup in London, and it's called TransferWise. And TransferWise I use personally very often because my son is studying in London, and when I wire money to him, and my salary is in euros in Estonia, and he wants to have in pounds, then you lose a lot of money always when you make those bank transactions. Right. And this is a company that saves you a lot of money. It's so easy to wire the money and so on. So this is another innovation that is really, people can feel the benefit.
Right.
The other magical number coming out of it, and what brings me to the SDGs, is that there are 17 SDGs, and they're all intertwined. And so basically I can say every innovation that we do has something to do with SDGs.
Absolutely.
Be it health, Estonian e-medicine, for example, is the best in the world. We are sharing the technology now with Finland. They are taking over the same system. We have e-signature. Tax forms are filled in online. Internet banking I mentioned already. So all those solutions are helping towards fulfilling the SDGs. And there is an estimation that with the technical digital solutions, probably the Estonian government is saving 2% of GDP every year. And 2% of GDP in our part of the world is a miracle number, and in the context of NATO, because there is an obligation of all NATO countries to spend 2% of GDP in defense. And there are only 5 NATO members who are doing it. Estonia is one of them. And the reason countries are not doing it, they claim with the economic difficulties and so on, they don't have the money. But in a way, saving 2% of GDP by technical solutions, you can say Estonian defense is for free. And so there are so many different fields.
Right.
One of the issues also that is plaguing, I think, most of the countries of the world is corruption.
Right.
And digital solutions, the transparency and efficiency coming out of it is also probably one of the main reasons why Estonia is considered to be the least corrupt country in our region. Because your computers don't have the secret drawer somewhere in it where you can just put your cash in.
Absolutely. There seems to be a lot of parallels between, though, how Estonia has established itself and what New York City is really innovating within this administration. And one of the things when we think about OneNYC and the Sustainable Development Goals, at the heart of it is public-private partnerships. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you, Minerva, about, you've done an excellent job working with academia and nonprofits, the private sector. I'm wondering how you're harnessing that power to promote OneNYC and the efforts of the city to connect broadband with equity. And I like what the ambassador said. At the end of the day, connectivity runs through all the SDGs, and I think connectivity runs through all of our OneNYC. And so I'd love for you to talk about the public-private partnership aspect.
Absolutely. I spent 30 years in the private sector before joining the government for the first time in my career. And I think, in essence, this is the beginning of a public-private partnership to bring some of that private sector perspective into government and becoming a government employee. But most importantly, what we do is we work with nonprofits like you said. Just recently, I'll give you an example. I participated in the World Government Summit, during which there were 3 days of working groups specifically around the UN SDGs. We broke up into different groups to talk about what the metrics and financing for each of these would be. And it was very interesting to meet with over 100 other countries at this meeting, that the themes were all very, very similar. That internet access is like the water or electricity of 100 years ago. That it is as essential to equality and economic opportunity as clean water was and continues to be in every country. Education, so absolutely education, but gender equity in education is extremely important in technology. So 30 years ago, when I studied computer science, there were about a third to almost 40% of those computer science students were women. Now it's down to 10% in the United States. In the meantime, the number of tech jobs has been going up. So there's something wrong with this picture. And so when we start at an early age, when we provide computer science education to lower, middle, and high school boys and girls, and make coding like a girl thing, then we're providing an opportunity to more and more people, and being visible and being vocal about the importance of equality in education is also a key part of this. And then finally, we work with a lot of fantastic organizations here, nonprofits and private sector companies. New York City really is, for me, the center of social innovation in tech. There are a bunch of wonderful companies who really are focused around doing tech for good. They share information with each other, and they share it globally as well. And so this is a growing, if you will, subsector of technology in New York City that is really about education tech, about providing, cheaper services for the underbanked, people who have sort of applications that help people find, where to go for a loan. And so I think that is something that it creates a great deal of hope for us when we share with both the private, the startups, the academic institutions that we have here in New York. We work with NYU, Cornell Tech, Columbia, on a lot of the, sort of policy side. How can we create an economy that is based on an innovation economy for all? So it's a very rich thing. And I think what's interesting, I think I'll close with this, which is that it's no longer about, the government knows everything, the private sector knows everything, the institutions know everything. It really is a spirit of partnership where we are creating unique sort of entities that are getting together in new ways to solve the toughest urban problems.
In that spirit of partnership, I want to switch the conversation, given our time, into the equity in technology piece of this conversation. Would love for you to address the public-private aspect of it, but really, when you look at the tech field in the US, globally, it is dominated by men. And how is New York City addressing that, and why is it a priority?
So I think Minerva spoke to the importance of including women and girls and recognizing that it's a girl thing, not just a boy thing. And doing that through universal computer science in schools is going to be a key piece of that. Obviously, what the Tech Talent Pipeline does is also critical to that. I think in the first class, it was literally almost 60% of the first class was female. So that's already starting to impact the gender balance. But I think we should step
really quickly,
back.
To that point, is that on recruitment, or was that just interest?
Sure, so I'm happy to speak to that.
Sorry, I was just, because that's a great
I think Lauren should answer that.
Sure, it is very deliberate recruitment and
Yeah.
partnerships with organizations that actually serve women. But beyond that, it's also a question of what supports can you offer that make it possible for more women to participate. Access to childcare, additional supportive services.
And the mayor, you're looking at a big chunk of the tech team in the city. We're virtually all female. And Kristen Titus, who both developed and leads Tech Talent Pipeline, is from Girls Who Code. So, it's really integrated even into the leadership of the work. But I actually want to step back from that, because I think there's also the tension with tech that we should be very frank about, which is that it's not, if we want equity in tech, we also have to think about how technology is actually going to create these huge shifts in the economy that are going to have huge impacts on people who are already low income and largely excluded from some of the economic opportunities they need. And this is going to be true globally, not just in the US. So it's not just how we think about the important things about getting education to folks and getting access to the kinds of internships and jobs that we currently have available. It's looking at 10 years down the line where the prediction is that technologies, and particularly artificial intelligence, may displace up to a half of the current low-paying jobs we have. And that's not just in New York City. That's across the globe. Now the question becomes, and that's for men and women. Obviously, women in particular, when we look at some of our lowest paying jobs, we often find women are disproportionately represented in them. And as we've just learned from a recent report, as women start to gain traction into employment sectors, the wages go down and the pay goes down for the same jobs, even though the job hasn't changed. So as we're looking at this massive shift in technology, we shouldn't be anti-technology. This is not my point. I think we need to embrace the opportunities that technology brings us. But to the ambassador's point, it's fundamental that we think about the policies that start to equalize and create equity and opportunity. That means that we have to imagine the fact that New York City, 36% of our population is foreign-born. 92% of our taxi drivers are foreign-born. Our taxis are going to be driverless soon. We need policies that address that because we don't want our population to shift. We don't want technology to stop progressing, but we fundamentally have to think about the social cleavages that that's going to create and how we use technology and use government policy to be recognizing that's where technology is taking us and creating the opportunities for these types of folks 10 years down the line. And if we don't do that now, it doesn't matter what our goals are. We're going to miss the goal.
Thank you, Maya. Not to put you on the spot, but it is CSW. So I'm sure your mission is thinking about this very actively right now. What is happening in Estonia to think about women in technology, but specifically from a policy standpoint, with the long-term goal ahead?
Well, the situation is very, very similar what you just explained. And it is, when I was a student, we had 25 students studying data processing, 5 of them boys, 20 being girls. But that doesn't go over if you look at the future of these people. Then this problem inequity exists very strongly. Women have lower salaries. When I was talking about startups, most of them are led by men. But this is something where I think, just like investing in education that I was talking about earlier, I think the equal opportunities coming out of equal access to information, equal access to internet, actually might be the driving force behind the change that will come. Right now, we have coding as one of the subjects in schools. All Estonian children are learning it, boys and girls. The opportunities coming from access, as I mentioned, will make a difference. But there are things also that have to be borne in mind, and the things we have learned out of where we are right now, also in the sense of equity. And one of them is, again, saying that the main thing that people are concentrating when talking about technological solutions is the technology. But I think technology is the easy part. The big part is the legal, social, economic framework that makes it happen, so that people will accept this, and that would empower also women going and using the opportunities that are out there. From another field, but a good example from Estonia, for example, is that we have e-health system or e-medicine, where if I break my arm in southern Estonia, then my medical records are with my ID card on the screen right away. And the technical solution, the technology was there already 2008, and it took years and years and years until it started slowly to come into action really in real life. And the reason was, first of all, the doctors, some of them were too lazy to fill in the forms. Some of them and most of them didn't have time, because there is like 20 minutes allocated to every patient. And the third thing, and most important thing, was that the hospitals were competing with each other. They didn't want the others to have this information. But this is just one example how you have to create the whole environment. And I think coming to gender equity issues, that's the same thing. You have to create, first of all, and that is the role of the government, is to create the sort of social infrastructure, legal infrastructure, so that the equal opportunities we're talking about would really make a difference.
Absolutely. Before we go into Q&A, Minerva, you've been working in this field for 30 years. I'm curious your experience being
Since I was 5. Yeah.
Since you were 5. And with a lot of boys then. You've been working, I'd just love to hear your perspective, given how the field has changed over the last 30 years, and now some of the work that you're doing with the UN counterparts working on sustainable development goals, how they're thinking about gender equity in this connectivity conversation.
So interesting. Thank you for that question, because it does differ by country. I did spend 2 years in Asia in my last job as CTO of Asia Pac for a large bank. And, culturally, it's very different country by country. And this really, for me, highlighted the role of both government and sort of social norms in developing equity in technology careers, because there are countries in Asia who are very focused on, we're going to be an engineer factory, and that's our economic development play. We're going to encourage every single one of our citizens to study technology, and we'll export them all over the world. And and so That is a stark contrast from, other places where, there are some countries where it's very commonplace for women to be tech entrepreneurs. And that really was a big eye-opener for me in my 2 years traveling around there. And so it highlighted for me the role of government, as the ambassador said, in really sort of changing that environment. And from my perspective, the notion of gender equity in technology is absolutely about, fairness, but with, in the United States, with 1.2 million jobs in tech being available by 2020, and only 29% of those jobs slated to be filled, this is an economic imperative, not only for the U.S., but for every other country that doesn't have the pipeline to fill those tech talent jobs. And so within the SDGs, they were very much a thread throughout. Technology is sort of a thread throughout all of the SDGs instead of being its own. And I think that was also an important point, that you could, in fact, use technology to create or define an equity space, but also the technology itself needs to be created by and for women in order for us to solve some of these problems.
Well, that's a great place to open it up. His hand was coming up as I was thanking you. This is now an opportunity to hear from all of you. I'm going to start with this gentleman right here. There's a mic right behind you. And really quickly, sir, the questions are going to be open to also the TED Talk speakers as well. So feel free to ask any questions you might have had earlier. Thank you.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, everybody. My name is Esteban Cadena from the Permanent Mission of Ecuador to the United Nations. I certainly appreciate the City of New York and the Ford Foundation to come up with this such an interesting conversation. I do have a reflection. I dearly appreciate the key words that you mentioned, that in order to facilitate or to allocate the equal chances for women to actually partake in this important and relevant topic, which is access to technology, you need to provide this additional supplemental support, like childcare or something like that. It's something that's worthwhile to explore and to deepen. And my second question will be, beside from that, and complemental, and moreover, it's important to actually recognize the importance to mend or to reduce the technological gap and the generational gap. I mean, even though we understand that older persons might face additional problems, you have to bear in mind that in the context of gender as well.
Absolutely.
So that's my two questions. And thank you for your time, ma'am.
Thank you again. Maya, that seems like a great question.
Yeah, I think that's such important points. I mean, one of the things that we have done in New York City is actually create universal pre-K, right? Universal pre-kindergarten for the first time in the history of the city. That is one component of actual child care because frankly, it gives you a safe place to have your child all day long. And so you can work. That's going to be a tremendous benefit, particularly for any parents, but particularly for women who are single parents. It also means that families can save $10,000 a year on childcare costs. So that's a significant way for families also just to boost their ability to care for themselves. So for the government to be expanding education and educational opportunity younger than age 6, is critically important. How we actually need the federal government to do more. It's actually been a significant financial lift. We need federal leadership. It's a good example of cities doing as much as they can, and we're not the only city, in an effort to do that. But one other point, though, to raise relevant to this, as we think about how the economy is shifting, one of the things that's happened in the United States is, small businesses are actually the fastest growing businesses and adding jobs significantly more quickly than large companies. When you look at entrepreneurship, actually black women, in particular, those businesses have grown over 600% in the past decade. For Latinas, it's also significant. For white women, it's around 200%. My point is that when we look demographically at where we need to build opportunity, we've actually seen entrepreneurship and small business entrepreneurship for women being significant. So I think to Minerva's point, and also the ambassador's point, the more we have these tools and access to this kind of infrastructure, the more that supports that kind of entrepreneurship. When you think about that, I mean, my mother was a working stay-at-home mom because she organized work out of the home. So there are also ways in which that technology and that ability to work from home also creates the opportunity for women and men who are taking care of children. So I think that's also something that government needs to think about, the policies that enable that kind of entrepreneurship. In the city, we're thinking a lot about our spending power and how we're using our spending power to ensure, by breaking up our contracts, to ensure that more small businesses in New York, particularly women and minority-owned, can get access to those contracting opportunities.
Great. Any other? We'll take this one right here.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Rosalie Keach from the League of Women Voters of the United States. I spent my career mainly in IT for more than 30 years and working for large corporations. And the one topic that I haven't heard here, especially as it regards to gender equality, is the topic of harassment and the effect that even subtle harassment has on women, and therefore them leaving the corporations and going into small businesses. I'd be interested on how Estonia especially addresses that, since you do have equality in the education area, how that translates into the workforce once women enter that workforce.
Thank you very much. We're looking at the subject that we have today. I think there is one important new field of harassment that we can talk about today, and it's online harassment. And this is something that is very serious. And you can read in newspapers about suicides of people, because one of the issues why it is so dangerous and so bad, a lot of it is hidden. People read about them. There are things like Facebook and so on where they take everything into their own soul, and it's hard to live with that. One of the things how we are trying to tackle this, we have an organization that is called Internet Police. An Internet Police is a body that goes through the comment sections of newspapers and also looks at things like Facebook and so on. And when they see clear cases of problems, they can start a process of remedying the things like that. But not only that, but people can also announce to the Internet Police their own harassment cases. They can turn to the Internet Police for help. And so in this context of what we are talking about, this is something that, first of all, we really have to bear in mind that it's a serious issue. And secondly, we have to tackle it. We have been starting to doing this. How successful we are, it's very hard to say. But we have several cases already where they have been helpful. It is not the only solution, of course. There has to be a bigger package of how to deal with this. But it's a major issue.
Thank you, Ambassador. Yes, please. The mic is right behind you.
Yes, thank you. I'm Queen Mother Dr. Deloise Blakely. I'm the Community Mayor of Harlem and the Ambassador of Goodwill to Africa.
Welcome.
As an alumni of MIT at the United Nations, in the 80s, we looked at adaptable and applied technology and UNDP. And looking at it, it's like everything is not adaptable for certain developments in a community. And I guess I raised the question when you're talking about the broadband and you're looking at the approach or relationship to the economy. How would you fare Harlem being a best practice for the world community, since Harlem is renowned and international? Ambassador, when will you come to Harlem with me? And thank you.
There are two parts to that question. Maya Minerva, the first one, and I hope you will join us in Harlem.
It's such an important point, and it's one of the reasons why in how we think about getting broadband to more communities, we're actually thinking about how we support that broadband, meaning Josh talked about public housing and getting free access and to residents all the way into their apartments. But we're also building a digital literacy fund so that there are ways to support people's utilization of that broadband, right? So that they can use it as a tool to develop what they want to develop that tool to be. But I think a second part of your point really goes to how we've been doing franchise accountability. So in every single franchise negotiation we have, franchising, for those of you who don't know, just meaning we're actually licensing access to our public streets to private companies to put in infrastructure, right? To put in fiber into the ground. But we do that in exchange not just for what you're actually bargaining for us with. We also ask what kind of corporate citizen you're going to be. Mm-hmm. So one example is now, thanks to our Link NYC franchise, they're going to deliver a gigabit fiber access and maintain it for 5 years to a public center in every single borough. So that's not just then the kiosk, that's actually creating essentially a gigabit speed incubator center in communities, and working with borough presidents. One of the things we've suggested to Gail Brewer is Harlem actually be a place that be considered for the Manhattan Gigabit Center. The same thing with digital literacy centers through Time Warner Cable. They've recently agreed to add 2 additional that means they're outfitting community centers with 300 megabit per second broadband speeds, creating the computers, putting it right in communities so that people can utilize it within their communities. So those are just some examples of, I think, how the city can use its relationship building, I think as the ambassador shared, in a way that does public-private partnership, but also brokers and negotiates ways for communities to have access to it for the things communities want and need, and adapt it on their own.
And for my part, I visited Harlem many times. The music and culture of Harlem are really unique. I'm telling everybody you have to go there. I would love to go with you.
Wonderful, and that is definitely a part of the mission for the Mayor's Office for International Affairs, is to get all of you diplomats who are doing such important work on the international stage to come and experience New York City, meet New Yorkers, and see the work that New York City leadership is doing. I want to thank you so much. We've run out of formal time. However, we do have this room till 10:30, so if you can, please stay, network, talk to our speakers today, and stay tuned. As we all know, COP21 is going to be signed at the UN on Earth Day in April, and we are definitely going to be doing another Global Vision Urban Action around that time to celebrate the work that New York City is doing synergetically with the Sustainable Development Goals on sustainability and climate change. So we hope to see you there. Thank you again for coming this morning. Oh, and the ambassador.
Pitch.
Please, pitch. That's
Whoever has Comedy Central on television, then tomorrow night,
yes, the Estonian.
our Prime Minister will be on, and he's 36 years old. He's very technically savvy. I'm quite sure this will be one of the subjects that will be talked about.
So tune in. Thank you. Thank you so much.